During the third day of hearing at the International Court of Justice, the Cuban delegation accused the Israeli occupation of committing massacres against the Palestinian people and denounced the United States of complicity in the massacres committed in the Gaza Strip. At least 19 civilians were killed and dozens were injured on Wednesday night in an Israeli airstrike on the Nuseirat refugee camp and the Zaytoun neighborhood in the besieged Gaza Strip. And in Peru, the General Confederation of Workers mobilizes to demand better salaries from the government of Dina Boluarte and denounced the wave of privatizations. Hello and welcome to From the South. I'm Alejandra Garcia from teleSUR Studios in Havana, Cuba. We begin with the news. During the third day of hearing at the International Court of Justice, the Cuban delegation accused the Israeli occupation of committing massacres against the Palestinian people and denounced the United States of complicity in the massacres committed in the Gaza Strip. The jury of the International Justice Organism continues to hear the arguments of the different countries condemning the actions of Israel for its illegal actions of foreseeable occupying the Palestinian territories. Several representatives of the Caribbean countries gave their position on the silence of the international community and the complicity of the United States in sponsoring the siege that Israel maintains in Palestine. The representative of the Cuban delegation, Ana Yancy Rodriguez, denounced the Tel Aviv regime of committing apartheid in the occupied Palestinian territories.
The Palestinian people, its girls, boys, women, and civilian population as a whole, continue to be massacred due to the illegal use of force by Israel, the occupying power. All this takes place with the complicity of countries such as the United States of America, responsible under international law for genocide, war crimes, crimes against humanity, and the apartheid regime that determines where people can live, work, and move around depending on their ethnic and religious backgrounds.
The Cuban representative pointed out that the Israeli occupation disrespects the principles of equal rights and self-determination of peoples established by the United Nations.
This treaty, of which the Statute of the International Court of Justice is an integral part, establishes in Article 2.4 that every state shall refrain from the threat or use of force against the territorial integrity or political independence of any states, or in any other manner inconsistent with the purpose of the United Nations. The Charter itself, in Article 1.2, recognizes as one of its purposes respect for the principle of equal rights and self-determination of peoples, which are systematically and flagrantly denied to the Palestinian people. These violations of general customary international law stand erga omnes.
Russia accused the United States before the International Court of Justice of maintaining an irresponsible approach that has weakened the political processes to resolve the Israeli occupation in Palestine. During his speech, the Russian ambassador to the Netherlands, Vladimir Evgeniyevich Taravin, assured that the current wave in the Middle East is the result of ignoring the United Nations Security Council resolutions. The diplomat accused Washington of sending military supplies to Tel Aviv, causing a greater tension before the international community for the resolution of the conflict between the Israeli regime and Hamas. In this context, the High Diplomat pointed out that the Tel Aviv regime continues to carry out illegal aggressions against the civilian population in the Gaza Strip. At least 19 civilians were killed and dozens were injured on Wednesday night in an Israeli airstrike on the Nuseirat refugee camp and the Zaytoun neighborhood in the besieged Gaza Strip. Israeli warplanes launched airstrikes on the house of the Ali's family west of the Nusayrat camp, killing 17 civilians and injuring dozens. Medical sources also affirmed the killing of journalist Ihab Nasrallah and his wife after being targeted by the occupation forces moving into the Zaytoun neighborhood of Gaza City. The journalist's 3 children were severely burned in the attack. Sources said that several civilians were injured after the Israeli occupation army targeted a group of residents in the Brama neighborhood south of Rafah in southern Gaza. Israeli artillery also shelled one of the towers in a Qatar-funded city of Hamad to the west of Khan Yunis in the south. The Israeli siege against Gaza has left 1.7 million people displaced. More than half of them are children who face the consequences of genocide. According to international organizations, the conflict has continued to escalate in recent months and has made the Gaza Strip the most dangerous place in the world for children. All children in Gaza have been exposed to profoundly painful situations and have witnessed horrors that no child should ever have to witness. Families desperately seeking shelter are forced to move to very small, overcrowded areas that lack adequate water services and where food and protection are also hard to find. The small amount of food available is not enough to meet the nutritional needs of children, and as a result, thousands of children are suffering from disease and malnutrition. Let's take a short break, but remember you can join us on TikTok at teleSUR English, where you will find news in different formats, news updates, and more. Other stories coming up. Stay with us. Welcome back. In Peru, the General Confederation of Workers, CGT, mobilizes to demand better salaries from the government of Dina Boluarte and denounced the wave of privatizations. Members of the organization affiliated to this confederation marched in different cities of the country to demand the government to increase the minimum living wage, which is currently around $270. The mobilized workers point out that the salaries they receive are not enough to cover the basic family basket. Another of the demands is the increase of pensions for retirees in compliance with the resolution of the Constitutional Court that establishes the progressive increase of the pensions. Workers also denounced the massive layoffs in the public sector and demand plans to address the problems of insecurity in the country. On Wednesday, Argentine railroad workers announced they will remain on strike after failing to reach an agreement with the government of Javier Milei for wage increase. In this sense, representatives of the drivers' union pointed out that they did not reach an agreement with the national government since it did not dictate the adjustment of the purchasing power as a measure to face inflation. In this sense, the railroad sector indicated that they will continue with the measure of strike and there will be no trains at any point of the country until Thursday's midnight. In this sense, unions representatives assured the strike has been almost completely complied they consider the government's proposal to demand of the train drivers insufficient. Brazil hosts one of the major meetings of global diplomacy with the participation of the foreign ministers of the world's largest economies for the first G20 ministerial meeting in 2024. The meeting taking place in Rio de Janeiro aims to address urgent issues ranging from conflicts in the Middle East to the need for reforms in global governance institutions such as the United Nations, the World Trade Organization, and multilateral banks. The meeting is scheduled for the evening of February 21st and the morning of February 22 at the Marina da Gloria takes place at a time of great geopolitical instability with crises unfolding in various regions of the world. U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken meets with Brazil's President Luiz Inácio Lula da Silva in the country's capital amid a diplomatic crisis between Brazil and Israel over the war in Gaza. U.S. Secretary of State landed in Brazil on Tuesday for his first trip to the South American nation, arriving in the middle of a diplomatic friction after President Luiz Inácio Lula da Silva enraged Washington ally Israel by comparing its Gaza campaign to the Holocaust. The comparison outraged Israel, which declared Lula persona non grata. President Joe Biden has been Israel's key backer, with the United States on Tuesday vetoing again a ceasefire call at the Security Council. For the top U.S. diplomat, the belated first trip to the Latin American power had been seen as an opportunity to build ties in a break from his exhaustive trips to the Middle East. Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov held a meeting with his Brazilian counterpart Mauro Vieira on the sidelines of the meeting of foreign ministers of the G20 member countries, which is being held in Rio de Janeiro. During the meeting, the two diplomats exchanged views on current issues on the bilateral and international agenda. They also reviewed the schedule of contacts at different levels, among other issues of common interest. According to a statement from the Russian Ministry of Foreign Affairs, the parties reaffirmed their mutual commitment to further strengthen all Russian-Brazilian ties. Brazil is the third and final stop for Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov on Latin American tour, which has also taken him to Venezuela and Cuba, where he started his tour. In Brazil, the governor of Rio de Janeiro, Claudio Castro, declared a dengue epidemic in the state after 49,450 cases and 4 deaths were recorded since the beginning of the year. At a press conference, Governor Carioca emphasized the importance of working calmly, but emphasized that declaring the state in emergency would provide faster service. He also warned about the approaching difficult days and months. It is estimated that some 150,000 cases could be confirmed up to May. Nicaragua commemorates the 90th anniversary of the death of the revolutionary and anti-imperialist leader Augusto César Sandino. Several activities are being held in tribute of the revolutionary patriot, including wreath-laying at the monument to the homeland heroes, cultural events and parades throughout the city of Managua. During the commemorations, the Sandinista youth reiterated its commitments with the nation and ideas of the resistance leader who managed to expel the United States forces from Nicaragua. In addition, the country's security forces marched along the streets of the capital to remember the anti-imperialist legacy left by the man who was known as the General of the Free Men. Primary and secondary school students in Nicaragua joined the commemoration of the 90th anniversary of the death of General Augusto Sandino. Children from the hero's hometown in Nicohomo dressed up as Sandino and girls dressed up as his partner Blanca Arauz. The commemoration was also attended by local residents who remembered the leader's determination to expel the United States soldiers, bequeathing a fighting spirit to the Nicaraguan people. We have a final short break coming up, but before we invite you to join our WhatsApp community for our English-speaking audience, you can scan the QR code on screen to join directly and share the link to reach more people. Constant news coverage of Latin America and the Caribbean, as well as the rest of the world. Stay connected and informed with teleSUR. Final short break. Don't go away. Welcome back to From the South. On Wednesday in India, police officers repressed with tear gas farmers marching to demand legal warranties for their production. The farmers resumed the march after failing to achieve results they consider acceptable in the negotiations with the government. The sector is demanding an agreement that establishes favorable crop prices for products such as legumes, corn and cotton for the next 5 years. Farmers trying to make their way to the Indian capital from the neighboring state of Punjab and Haryana have been pressing on the outskirts of the Indian capital for a week. However, police forces fired tear gas shells at the protesters as they tried to approach towards New Delhi. On Wednesday in Pakistan, the Pakistan Muslim League and the Pakistan People's Party confirmed the agreement to form a new coalition government in the country. The agreement marks the end of the political deadlock in Pakistan, where the authorities will have until February 29th to convene the first parliamentary session to decide on the new government. It should be noted that no political party obtained a simple majority in elections, which forced the parties to unite in order to come to power, but the lack of consensus had given rise to an uncertain scenario. Precisely, local media highlighted that the latest elections in Pakistan are facing allegations of electoral fraud, as a senior official resigned from his post on Saturday after taking responsibility for the manipulation of election results in at least 5 districts in Punjab province. In Spain, the 31st Criminal Court of Madrid decrees the acquittal of José Manzaneda, coordinator of the digital media Cuba Información and Euskadi, Cuba. The sentence comes 4 days after a public hearing in Madrid in which Manzaneda and Euskadi, Cuba, were accused by the president of the Association Prisoners Defenders, Javier Larrondo, considered a detractor of the Cuban government. The court in Madrid also ordered the head of Prisoners Defenders to pay part of the cost for his recklessness and bad faith by maintaining that the accusation lacked grounds. In a statement, the defense attorney recalled that the private prosecution was asking for 6 years in prison and a fine of €8,400 for the journalist. The criticism of the so-called anti-Castro focused on the medical collaboration that the Cuban government carries out in several countries of the world. In Albania, opposition demonstrations protested violently outside the government building to demand the resignation of Prime Minister Edi Rama. Several protesters were arrested after some threw incendiary devices at a police cordon. The protest in Tyranny was organized by the Democratic Party of former Prime Minister Sali Berisha, who is currently serving a sentence of house arrest for corruption offenses. The protest was called on the anniversary of the fall of the communist government of Enver Hoxha on February 20, 1991. The opening of the Games of the Future was held on Wednesday in the city of Kazan in the presence of Russian President Vladimir Putin and his counterpart from Belarus, Alexander Lukashenko. Although competitions have been held for 3 days in the context of the first Russia 2024 Games of the Future, athletes and spectators gathered with the leaders of the region to make the event official. The Games of the Future, the first of their kind in history, is a new high-tech tournament of international level and will be held until March 3rd in Kazan, the capital of the Russian Republic of Tatarstan. This international multi-sport e-sport tournament based on phygital concept, which involves the combination of the visual and the real worlds, that will include competitions in 21 disciplines, including football, hockey, phygital, basketball, laser tag, drone racing, robot battles, and sport programming. We have come to the end of this news brief, but you can find these and many other stories on our website at telesurenglish.net and join us on social media, Facebook, X, Instagram, Telegram and TikTok as well. For Telesur English, I'm Alejandra Garcia. Thank you for watching.